Welcome to Lawyers Who Learn, where we explore how attorneys' engagement and lifelong learning fuels their growth. Join us to uncover these journeys and gain insights for your legal career.
Dad, welcome to Lawyers Who Learn. It's great to have you on.
It's always a great pleasure to be with you, Dave.
Being with the Alan Schnurman. Lawyers Who Learn is launching, and this is the first episode that we're going to be sharing with everybody. And this year and this week is our 25th year anniversary for Lawline. And I thought it'd be really interesting to talk about your history, but also to talk about the history of the founding of Lawline. And every Lawyers Who Learn episode has a theme. And some themes I discover as we're doing the interview, and some I decide ahead of time. And I have decided on the theme ahead of time for you because after knowing you for, as your son, 47 years, it's still the number one question that I always ask you. So if I'm always asking this question for you, certainly other people will be too. And just as a reminder, this is about how you learn or learned in your career, how you learn today, and how you think you're going to learn in the future. And so when you keep that in mind as you answer. So you ready for the theme?
I'm on the edge of my seat.
This theme is learning through calculated risks.
Okay.
And that's exactly what Lawline was 25 years ago in 1999. And before I have you share that calculated risk you took and how you learned through it, I'm just going to read you, it's perfect timing, a customer testimonial that came in yesterday. Lawline is simply the best resource for all your bar ongoing training, especially for recording and saving all course certificates, which can be easily downloaded and printed. I have only used Lawline for the past 20 plus years. And that's exactly what it's about. We're gonna get back to that. But tell me, what was the origin story of Lawline, the CLE company?
I've always been good at ideas. Don't ask me to execute. That's your department. But ideas are pretty ahead of the curve on many things. I would say it was back in 1999. Your mother and I, we worked together. She did all the marketing for the law firm. We had the idea of just expanding the marketing somehow. And then one of our tenants, an attorney tenant in our space, showed me the internet. I had never seen the internet before. And he told me something about previously it had been used by the military and corporations, but he showed me how you can bounce from one particular subject to another. Of course, it was linking. And that he said this was the future. And within 1/2 hour, I was sold. I was absolutely sold on the internet. I thought it was going to be the total future of our modern age. And at that time, I've been giving a lot of courses in the bar associations on litigation, on the business of law. And I said, this would be the perfect thing for attorneys. You don't have to.
So take me through because what was the risk that you took? You take a risk, you've taken risks your entire life in so many areas.
Right.
And Lawline didn't just happen. You clawed your way through it, through litigation, through almost going public, through almost merging with other companies, through a dot-com crash, through having to reinvent, through investing significant amounts of money with no potential return. So this wasn't a story of I had an idea and it just happened. It was a really challenging and exciting time. So what was this calculated risk you had to take?
First, I will say that what I always lacked in my life was a role model. I had no role models. So everything that I had to do was brand new from the start, whether it's learning how to try cases, whether it's investing in real estate. I never had any type of prior experience. And we had the idea. I brought it to my partner, Ben. He liked it. I brought it to your mom, Judy. At that time, she liked it. And we went about saying, how are we going to develop it? At that time, to our knowledge, there was no online CLE in the state of New York. Might have been other places, but certainly not in the state of New York, which was the #1 market for CLE, in my opinion, at that time. We had one advantage is that we had Lawline TV, where we interviewed lawyers and judges every year, and we had been doing that for 10 years prior to 1999. We knew all the judges, we knew all the administrators, and we called the chief administrative judge, and we told, your mother did, and said, we have this idea of being able to give continuing legal education online. Let's sit down, let's have a conversation to see what you will approve and what you won't approve. We worked with the Office of Court Administration, and we came up with a systematic way that they would be satisfied that the attorneys were actually taking the courses. And it had to do with writing down numbers and passwords and stuff of that nature.
Okay, let me take you a little bit further out. So you had this conversation. They said, sounds good. Let's come up with a process. This is in 1999. Pets.com was there. Lots of, you come up with the name, delivery.com, anything you come up with, they get millions or tens of millions of dollars in funding. And of course, right around that time, maybe a year or two later, was when Mark Cuban sold broadcast.com for, I think it was like $5 or $6 billion in stock to Yahoo. And so what was let's talk about risk, focus on risk. What was your thought? Because how did you go about, you didn't just say, okay, let's shoestring budget this and let's maybe do it. No. Tell us through the investment and the thought process and just tell me this is an exciting story. Tell me the exciting story of what happened.
I'm an attorney, I'm a litigator, but I'm also an entrepreneur. And I understand the concept that you have to invest money to make money. And you couldn't do it on a shoestring. And we decided to outlay a substantial budget. And we hired a firm to do all the software, which was very expensive at that time because they had to learn as we had to learn. And after we worked out a process with the Court of Administration, then we had to have each individual course approved by the Court of Administration here in New York. And then there were, at that time, 38 other states. So we had to set up a whole system of approval in those states, which we did. And
so you found a company, spent significant six figures to have them build it out in the 1999 type of way. And when they built it, they actually had to host it too and manage it. And then you got approvals to do it. You used your network to find faculty. And this is during, to those of you who weren't working at this time, this is during the dial-up era. This was not broadband. And I think that will be a little bit of a theme that we'll talk about, being a little bit ahead before your time, but we'll get to that. And how did you get the name out there for Lawline? What was the big thing that you guys did?
At that time, there was a show on ABC called Nightline. So I said, Nightline, Lawline. And this goes back to 1983. And at least I was experienced enough to have the word Lawline trademarked. So when we got the idea to go from Lawline, which was a television show in the metropolitan New York area, and then we expanded it to PBS, which was national, the natural thing for me to do was to have lawline.com trademarked. And I did. No one else had used it at that time. We had the word trademarked, lawline.com, and there was somebody out in Texas who was using lawline.com. He could use it, but he couldn't publicize it. I had the trademark, and eventually he had to give it up to us.
Which is a huge deal that is undertold. So you got the website, you build it. Now you did a really expensive and risky, calculated risk, a marketing campaign. You decided to send postcards out to attorneys all over the country. And on the postcard, they I think you were offering either free course, and they were entering to get a free laptop at the time. And this was multiple six figures that you spent on it. And your goal at that time was get users, get people using the site. And it was the faster you can do that. What did you learn? And I think maybe you got 5,000, 10,000 people to sign up. What did you learn during that process?
I'm always good at marketing. Marketing, advertising is the basis of the American way. We did it. And of course, at that time, anything with the internet, the stocks were going up and up. And we thought we'll go public, we'll become billionaires overnight, and then we retire and give you the company. It didn't work that way. Around 2000, I would think the entire internet world collapsed. All the stocks collapsed. Good time to buy, but I didn't. And then we actually had negotiations with different firms at that time. We went out to California. We went out to, I think it was Mountain View in California. We were speaking to different people to fund us into 7 figures. We were able to fund it in 6, but 7 figures regarding marketing. Then the whole internet world collapsed. And we had 16 courses up at that time. Again, it was easier for us to get lecturers. Why? Because we used the experts that we were interviewing for since 1983 on Lawline TV to be our lecturers for the lawline.com. And the market collapsed. We still had the courses up, and your mother and my partner Ben said, all right, we invested all this money. It doesn't seem to be working. Let's shut it down. I said, shut it down? I don't shut down anything. I just don't. I believe in this. I believe in the internet. I believe in lawline.com, and I'm not shutting it down. And we had some conversations, so they left me alone, and we ran those 6 courses till 2006. And what happened in 2006?
And we're going to go ahead, finish the sentence.
You came to Ben and I, our partners, and said, I have an idea. And we said, what is it? He said, I want to take over Lawline. I said, all right, we have 16 courses up. We basically break even every month. We don't lose money. We don't make money.
And how much were you bringing in?
Bringing in about $1,000 a month, about $12,000 a year. And that's basically what it cost us in fees to have it up. But I don't give up on anything. And you said, and you presented, if you recall, a business plan that literally was that thick. I didn't even know you could write a business plan. And we read it and said, boy, did that make sense. And we worked out a deal between us. You took it over. David, you never looked back. It was shocking. I remember Ben wanted you to have to take over the company, certain benchmarks that you had to make. You went through the benchmark the first month. And within a year, you were doing 10 times what we did. And then every year after that, you were doubling every year. And the rest is history. I think you sell almost 1 million courses a year now. It goes to show you, I'm good at ideas. Don't ask me to execute. But you found us, and you're great. You're a great businessman.
It's fun to have your dad on your podcast because there's no one rooting for you more than your dad.
I'm telling you the truth. It's not a matter of rooting. Dave, you took something that was stagnant. And what's that expression? You took a sow's ear and you made it into a silk purse.
I think this is the point in the podcast where you talk about the secret weapon. And so I think about the second year into the business so to your point, I started doing this in law school. My 3rd year of law school, I switched my classes around. So I had classes 2 days a week, and 3 full days I focused on Lawline. I got a high school intern. And for the first 2 years, I just hustled. And I partnered with Lorman. I partnered with, oh my God, I'm forgetting their names, Marino. And we didn't have the content. So they gave us content on a royalty share. And then we started slowly building up our content. Then we started hiring people. Then we just started dealing with some challenges with that. We have not mentioned, and we'll circle back to this, the entire time back in 2000 and even in 2006 and 2008, you were practicing, at this time, you were a practicing attorney. You practiced personal injury for 40 years and built up a really sizable firm and practice. And And I want to talk about that for a minute and get to the theme of calculated risk. But about 2 years into it, my older and much smarter sister was working with you, and you had a vision. And tell us about that vision and where we are today with it.
I came to your older, smarter sister. Well, that's a quote from you. And I had a discussion with her, and I said, I am not the future. David is the future. And go with Lawline. I want you to go with them. And she says, are you firing me? I said, no, Michelle, I would never, ever fire you. But I think I'm trying to give you advice that the future is lawline.com, which I knew back in 1999. I didn't know how to effectuate it. You did, and you executed on it. She went with you, and of course, the rest is, she's part of the history of Lawline.
Yeah, I think it really is special that we've gotten to work together for the past 15 plus years and create a culture and impact on the industry and build a team. Many of our leaders in the company have been here 10 years, close to 10 years, and they've gone through the process with us. Let's go back to the theme of the show, learning through calculated risks. Whew, man, I don't even know where to start with you, but let's talk about, we're going to talk about specific examples in your life. Let's talk about personal injury. You took many calculated risks, and I think in terms of growing your firm, two that stick out was when Vioxx was a drug that they determined there was an issue with it, and it was very clear that there's going to be a lot of lawsuits about that. Take us through what you did there. And what I'm really interested here, Dad, is the attorney who just started their firm or has a small firm, and they're not sure how to take a calculated risk. Take us through the calculations you did in the Vioxx cases, not just telling us what you did, but how someone can take that sort of input.
I will, but the point I want to bring out is, first you have to believe in yourself and you believe in your own decision-making process. I always believed in myself, and I always believed in what I felt, and I stuck to it, even though it would take a long time. When I heard, it was Wednesday morning, and I heard that Vioxx was taken off the market because of issues being health. I myself, the dentist gave me Vioxx, so I knew the drug. And I said, my God, this is really something. This was an enormous medication that millions of people were taking. And I spoke to my partner, Ben, and I spoke to your mom, Judy, and I said, we could really go with this. And at that time, we were advertising with 1010 Wins, and I had discussions with them. I told them I wanted to buy the station. And they said, buy the station? What does that mean? You want to buy this place? I go, no, I want to buy every available spot on 1010 Wins, which, as everyone knows, in New York was...
I don't think everyone knows anymore, but yes, it was a news station.
It was a news station. And they said, okay. And they said, we can't do it until Saturday morning. And I said, fine. And we'll start it at 5 o'clock Saturday morning. We'll start running 80 spots a day. 80 spots a day. No one buys 80 spots a day in radio. But again, it was a major investment, but I believed in it. And I showed up Saturday morning. I had one clerk with me. And at 5 o'clock in the morning, the first ad ran for Vioxx. If you've taken a Vioxx and if you've been injured in Vioxx, call 1-800-Lawline, which of course was our phone number. And which is of course another story, how we got that. And the phone started lighting up at 5 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. And we couldn't handle the volume, just the two of us. We couldn't handle the volume. We're taking everybody's name and everybody's story. We went right to the next one. And then by Monday, I had 7 people in the office answering phones. And we had over 2,000 calls that first week. It was incredible.
And of course, you settled a lot of cases. You settled all those cases for significant sums that impacted a lot of people. So you said believe in yourself. It made me think about a little bit about your childhood. I know you credit your dad died when you were 7. your mom came when she was 13 years old, first immigrant from Ukraine to the United States on a boat, and you guys had no money, and your older siblings were out of the house, and it was just you and grandma. And I know you credit a lot of who you are today with how she instilled confidence in you. In fact, whenever she would talk to other people, she would say, "My Alan."
That's
So
right.
what
And my
did
cousins used to call me my Alan.
what did grandma do that helped you believe in yourself? Because this is not just about being a lawyer, this is about parenting, right? Many people who are listening to this might be a parent. And so what did she do for you?
She instilled in me the confidence that I can do anything if I set my mind to it, and if I persevered in it.
But she was a tough cookie. So what did she tell you that? Did she show by actions? Did she just give you a lot of love? Did she give you a lot of attention?
To me continuously.
She showed it?
Continuously. She was always proud of whatever I did. And to be quite frank, that's the way I raised you and your sister. I always try to give you the confidence in yourselves and that in the decision-making process. A lot of parents, I think, don't do it the same way. But I grew up feeling that I could do anything if I worked at it, and I worked hard at it.
You correct me if I'm wrong. You were the first one in your family to go to college.
That's correct.
You were, of course, then the first one in your family to go to law school. Why did you want to become a lawyer?
My mother instilled that I always had to have a profession. So before I became a lawyer, I became an accountant. And I graduated Brooklyn College as an accountant. And so I would have 2 degrees to fall back on. And at that time, it seemed, she always told me I was going to be a lawyer because I was a good talker. And it seemed the way to go. I had a business in college called Campus Apparel, where I sold sweatshirts and T-shirts, anything with a fraternity name on it, a sorority name on it. And then I had subcontractors of people in other colleges selling for me. And then eventually I went into mail order. At that time, I felt that I wanted to be a professional. I didn't want to be selling sweatshirts the rest of my life.
So grandma told you were going to be a professional, and you believed her, and you went through that process. But going to law school, was not easy. And I think, if I am correct, you barely got in to law school, and you could barely afford it. Tell us the process of going to law school.
I couldn't afford it. I had no money. My mother had no money, and I drove a cab. I went to law school in the day. I didn't want to go at night, and I drove a cab at night, which I liked, by the way. Because I like people, and if you got into my cab, it was in the late 60s, early 70s. I spoke to you, and we had a conversation, and then hopefully I made your day or made it better.
We're going off, of course, from calculated risk, but that's okay, because I know your story, and I think it's important learning. And so I'm going to ask you to go a little bit vulnerable here.
Okay.
Tell us about your graduation day and what you and what you've taken from that, what you've learned from that. And if you want to tear up, go for it. Tell us about that.
I remember the day because I'm sure I've told you the story. I was active at law school. I worked very hard between the cab driving and my studying. I graduated near the top of my class. I was like between night and day, it was about 112 students. And when I was president of the Student Bar Association. So I gave a speech at graduation and as the Student Bar Association president, and my whole family was there, my brother, my sister, their spouses, my mom was there. And I had no money in my pocket because I ran out of money, but I figured they would take me home. They would drive me. I was living in the Upper West Side in a rent control department. Never did I think they wouldn't drive me home. And they took me out for Chinese food, and we went to Chinatown, and they gave me gifts, and then they just left. And I was embarrassed to tell them I didn't have any money. I just didn't have any money. I didn't have 10 cents. I just didn't have any money because I was going to work that night. And I remember I went to the subway station, and I guess it was Chambers Street, downtown Manhattan. And I went up to the clerk at the desk, and I said, "Listen, I just graduated law school. I have to get to the Upper West Side. I have all these gifts. I'm wearing a suit and tie and I have no money. And he thought, and he says, all right, go in. And he let me go in the exit and I got to the west side and the rest is history. And I have to tell you, I remember it must have been 3 or 4 years later. And I was on my own practice at that time, went into my own practice basically right after law school. And I had settled the case and we got a $21,000 fee. And I passed that subway inspection. And I just looked at it and said, boy, things are going very well for you. And I'll never forget it.
No, that's a great story, and I always remember it because that feeling of leaving and not telling anybody you didn't have money.
Because I was proud,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
But I may add,
What'd you say?
false pride, because I would have had to walk to the Upper West Side
Totally.
had I not had met somebody who was very nice to me.
One of the lines that always stood out to me when I was a kid, and I asked you what you did, and it was always clear to me that you loved being a personal injury attorney, and you really cared about it, and which is the opposite when you hear about people who are like most people complain, right? And you didn't. And there was a line that stood out to me about the mission of what you thought of your profession. And I'm not going to say it to you. I want to see if you know what I'm talking about, because I think you created a mission and a value that lifted you up and lifted everything up. And I think that's a really important thing for everybody to think about. Do you know what I'm talking about?
People.
No. Do you know the specific line I'm talking about? If not, I'll just say it. I'll say it.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Go ahead.
Like Robin Hood, that
Go
line?
ahead. Go ahead.
I really did. I took money from the rich insurance companies and I gave it to people who didn't have any money. They didn't have any money. When these are working class people that basically live from paycheck to paycheck, that never had any savings whatsoever. And I changed their lives. They bought houses, they sent their kids to college, they felt good about themselves. Yes, they suffered terrible injuries, but the injuries were one thing, but then at least for their whole family prospered because of what I did. Sometimes we actually did what they call annuities, because these people didn't know how to manage significant sums, and they got paid every month a certain amount. And
well, I'll tell you, that resonated with me as a child, that the belief you had in what you were doing. The other thing that resonated with me as a child, and again, it's okay if we both get emotional or cry, but you and mom worked together. And I always admire that. And mom passed away in May, about 5 months ago, actually, yesterday. And I think we're all, at least I am, still in denial to some degree, but it's okay to talk about. But one of the things that I always admired for 20, 25 years, you guys, she was the producer of Lawline and she was at the office, but she was the producer of your life in a way, and everything that you did. So tell me what it was like to work with your spouse on so many different levels, because I in some degree, I think a lot of people can never do that, or maybe would want to do that. And what did you learn from that?
we weren't only husband and wife. We were partners in a family that raised you and Michelle. And we worked together. I loved working with your mother. She was much smarter than me. And especially in advertising and media, and she produced Lawline TV, and it was amazing success. It was like I always said about being a litigator, I would pay somebody to do it. I enjoyed it so much. And I enjoyed working with your mom all those years. Of course, she told me what to do, but
now you have Michelle to tell you what to do.
but now I'm on my own. It's weird.
Gary, you told Michelle I was the future. You also decided it was time for you to leave the full-time practicing of law, and you had other partners there or who took it over. And you and Ben decided it was time. Why was that the right time for you? Was it the industry? Were you ready to move on? Were you wanted? I know you've obviously invested a lot in real estate. What was the calculation there?
To be quite frank, Ben wanted out. Ben is 10 years older than me. And we were very fortunate. We really didn't have to work anymore. We had I bought my first property, I guess, in 1977. And we invested steadily in real estate since then. And we still invest in it. Money wasn't the issue, but I kept saying to Ben, what am I going to do? I was really concerned on what I was going to do. Here, I had a profession that I enjoyed every day. I loved being a lawyer. I loved talking with my clients. I loved going to court and trying cases. But we decided, all right, I'll try it. So we retired. And of course, this was 14 years ago. So now, if you did the calculation, everybody knows how old I am. And then
You can say your age, but it's okay. Go ahead. You're 79 and proud. Go ahead.
I remember I did a lot of walking. I went to every museum. I hung out with your mother, and of course, she turned around at one point and said, "This isn't working for us." I go, "Oh, I was very happy." She goes, "Oh no, this is not working. I play mahjong, and I'm playing canaster, and I go out with my friends for lunch." I go, "I can join you." Go, "No, you can't join us." And so I went and I became a real estate broker in the Hamptons, which of course was very successful as well.
Yes, you did reinvent yourself at that time. And what was interesting, go ahead, what were you going to say?
I tell people, I haven't retired, I've rewired.
No, I love it. And just on that note, I got to tell you, you were a broker in the Hamptons, working open houses every weekend, and people half your age, more than half your age, were there, and everybody's looking at you. What is he doing? Why is he working so hard? What is he doing at these open? He could be playing tennis. He's at an open house all day, dressed up, selling. Did he lose his money? What's going on? And so the hustle that you had, and I remember one house that, again, we don't have the time to go into these stories. You have a book, which I will pitch right now. It's called I Can, I Will, I Must. And you do tell, it's about attitude and your quotes. And I Can, I Will, I Must is one of your quotes. And I see Daniel writing it down right now. And you do tell a lot about your real estate story. And part of that is, you said you have to believe in yourself to invest in real estate. And that's the ultimate calculated risk. And I'm going to ask you to share one thing, because this is I think a good thing that people can use in life. Whenever you would buy a property, what would be the way you would actually calculate that risk? I know you would take a piece of paper and do something with it.
As when I've told you to do this, I never really know how I feel about anything. So what I do is I develop a system of yes, no's, and I draw a line down the center of the page. And I said, I write down all the yeses, why I want to do this deal, and then all the no's, why I don't want to do this deal. And as I've always told you, in real estate, there's 10 legitimate reasons why not to buy everything, why not to do every single deal. But there's only one reason to do it, and that's how you make money. And after I drew this list, and let's assume the no's come out way ahead of the yeses. There's problem with the land, there's problem with the neighbor, I don't like the seller, the house needs a paint job, it's disgusting, but it's in a good location. And after I look at the list, and let's assume the no's out, and I get a feeling of, no, I really want to buy it. And then that's how I know what I really want to do at the end. Or if the yeses are more, and I said, nah, I really don't want to do this deal.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I'm glad you say that, because you can obviously bias the yes or no's to a certain way or not. And so what you did was you try to use logic, and then you use the emotion after you do the logic, you do the emotion, and you use your intuition to determine if you want to do a deal or not. Anything else you can think of for a lawyer who, let me mimic your career where you're a solo practitioner, to help them take calculated risk? And I'm gonna just give you a sort of a picture. In the next 3 years, and already, law is going to transform faster than it ever has before. And a big part of that is what's happening with AI and technology. And we see it as our mission at Lawline over the next 3 years to prepare attorneys for the future of law. What are some of the things as a solo practitioner or a small firm like yours that an attorney can do to take more calculated risks? Or what are some things that they can do to learn to help them?
The first thing I want to say is Everything is about relationships with your partner, relationships with your clients. It's all about relationships. And you have to understand that. Law is really all about relationships between you and the jury. And the things that you really have to stress regarding relationships is, one, you have to be credible, never, ever misrepresent anything. If anything, undersell, especially to a jury. They're very smart. Undersell your case. Never try to oversell your case. That's the first way to lose. And always be credible. Trustworthy and credible. And that's how you base this. And that's how I built the whole firm. If you became my client, I worked as, and you may not have been the nicest person in the world, but if you became my client, I worked as hard as I could possibly do to get you the best result. And it gave me satisfaction. And I built a big firm from it. And
you are, what I love about you, you're like a politician. Regardless of what I ask you, you're going to answer what you want to answer.
because I have a lot to say.
No, and it's true. Relationships are there. And it's not, there's no magic answer to how to take calculated risks. How do you learn right now? What do you do to learn? Are you keeping up with technology? Like, how do you keep up to date with what's happening? And maybe you're not with law. Maybe you're not as tuned.
I choose what I keep up to date with. And of course, that is, I must get 200 emails a day, sometimes 300 emails a day on different listings and different projects around the country in real estate, because now that's mainly what I do. And I go through them. And from that, you really learn a lot about different areas. And I found out one thing that I always try to do is I only try to invest in areas that I know.
Got it.
And if you're looking to become financially secure, I always believe real estate is the easiest way to financial security. And buy the house next door to you before you buy a house in Arizona.
If you believe in yourself, you can do it. I have two last questions. By the way, I had the flashback as I'm doing this interview and you're answering questions. You were talking about practicing law. I remember in the early days of Lawline, when you were taught CLE courses for us, I actually, for some of them, I interviewed you because I know how to get, I think I knew where I wanted to go. And I just got this report and I'm like, you know what? I think if we look at those videos, we might have aged pretty well, at least on camera. So it's fun to be back in the interview game for Lawline together. So the two last questions is, and I'm going to say them both so you can think about the second one as you answer the first one. Is you say you're an idea guy. I'm putting you on the task right now. What is your idea? Where you see Lawline? How do we have or the next 3 years, next 5 years? What would be your ideas for how Lawline can continue to serve the legal community, whether it continue to grow, continue to have impact? And where would you think about that? And what excites you when you see what's happening right now? And the second question is, what questions do you have for me, if at all any? We end every podcast with the guests asking me any questions they want. And if they have, that's great. If they don't, that's great as well. But let's go back to the first question is, what is your idea? I said, Dad, I'm done. I need you to take over. I'm retiring now. You're back on it. You're like the CEO of Starbucks who every 5 years comes back on. What would be your ideas for the vision?
It's not my idea. It's the direction Lawline is going. And of course, it has to do with artificial intelligence. As you said, the whole legal profession is on the cusp of changing, if it hasn't changed already. And what Lawline is doing, that someone can watch a course and ask a question. And because we have so many courses and so much knowledge in on digital form, just like I asked Google Maps how to get to a particular location, I use that example. Lawline can give that lawyer enough information to get started in their research and give them a tremendous head start. I'm not saying it's exclusive, but it'll give them, from our experts, tremendous head start in the direction they want to go. And that's where I see the progress coming today and tomorrow. It's a new world, just like the internet was a new world, and I recognize that.
If you could hit
and I recognize that.
if you could hit an easy button or a dream button or think big button, how would you 10x Lawline?
Give me that. How would I like Lawline?
10x it, grow it up 10 times.
As I tell you, I believe in public relations and I believe in advertising. All advertising works. I always used to say, I could probably get rid of half my advertising budget. I just didn't know which half to get rid of. It's all advertising. Marketing is what make America great. And you have to market, and public relations, I always found that was the least expensive way to advertise.
You have said that, and you've been consistent with that. And that's, I think, a good way that for lawyers to think, especially solo practitioners. And what I see really exciting in my conversations with attorneys, especially for solo practitioners and small firms, is the opportunity that AI will bring to allow them to do value-based pricing and get rid of the billable hour. Because if you're a solo practitioner, you only can work so many hours a week. So if you're looking to scale your firm, you can actually create flat fee-based pricing because you can do things so much quicker now than you could before, and it's only going to change. And that's what I'm most excited about for small firms. And obviously this can happen on all scales. Now, I'll throw it to you. Is there any questions that came to mind in this conversation that you have for me about Lawline or about what we do? And if not, we will say bid adieu.
No, of course I have questions. I'm going to ask the same question you asked of me. Where do you see Lawline in 5 years?
Let me start with this. I've always believed and I've always wanted for Lawline to not only be a CLE provider, but to be there for just-in-time learning for lawyers, right? So you don't need, and that's what's happening all over the industry right now. You don't need to have to watch an hour CLE course to get the information that can help you in your practice today. And I see that not only just for attorneys, but beyond in different professions and different businesses and in corporations. And I see it among a lot of other areas. And so for me, where I would love to go is to continue to build amazing content that not only can help prepare attorneys for what's happening in this change that's happening, but also make it easier and more accessible for them to do it. And on a larger scale, we have the fastest growing segment of Lawline right now is providing accreditation services and CLE services for large and mid-sized firms. Because more than ever, it's important for firms to train internally to get everybody up to speed, especially for new associates. And we make it easier to when they need that CLE accreditation to get that done. And so I just see opportunities in the next 3 years to really focus and grow that area of the business because there's a strong pain point. But my dream button is lawyers, professionals, businesses, corporations, individuals at companies, and then eventually the dream button is the public. And the final thing I'll say there, and these are dreams that I've been having for a couple of years now. The final thing is, it's been over 10 years since we renamed the company to Further Ed. And one of the reasons at the time was the same concept you had early on, was to go into different verticals. And the only vertical that really stuck was accounting. But the ultimate thought process for Further Ed is furthering your learning, right? Furthering your education. And what's so empowering, and if you look to that testimonial that we just read in the beginning of this episode, that individual's been with us for 20 plus years. I've talked to so many attorneys who are customers who binge watch our courses to help them in their career. So it's a long answer to your question, but let me know if you need to fine tune it or if I answered it well enough.
No, you did answer it. That's basically where you want to be, and you'll be there. You always have the way to do that. And now, especially, you're a business in the cloud.
We're a remote company in the cloud with a great culture and great team. And I think it's a perfect way to end it. And I really appreciate you and appreciate the relationship that our families had and where we're at. And I hope celebrating this 25th year anniversary, this being the first podcast that we'll do, while I didn't necessarily get to the goal of learning through calculated risk, I do think people will hear your experiences and see the risk that you took. And you did give a lot of really good input and what you did and how you did it. And I think there's a lot of energy that somebody who goes through this podcast will get. So thanks, Dad.
Believe in yourself and other people will believe in you.
Love it. I love it. Thank you, Dad.
Thank you.